Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session on documentation. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you this afternoon, and we are so glad to have you here with us. I am Ces Nitafan, and I am the co founder and administrator of Better Together Homeschool. So, for today, I will be talking about documentation and validation options for independent homeschoolers. So with that, let me share my screen. All right. Okay, so for this afternoon, we're going to talk about documentation. Okay, so I think this is one of the most important concerns of independent homeschoolers. Kasi, di ba, we've been doing this on our own, and most of the time, we're not really enrolled with a provider, and we don't have papers or documents. Okay, so I want to start off with this question. When do you actually need it? When do you really need documentation? Okay, normally you need documentation when you want to go back to, regular school or when it's time for your children to go to college. So I want you to remember this, parents. No, let's take note of this question. No, because I think the answer to this question will really help you plan out when to get your accreditation or your validation documents. Okay. So, of course, there are many ways that independent homeschoolers can get documentation or validation. So, of course, one of the most famous options would be our DepEd validation. So, as you all know, this includes the PEP test, okay, as or it's also known as the Philippine Educational Placement Test. Before there was the ALS, no, but I think as the pandemic has set, DepEd made sure that ALS is only for those under that said program. And then the PEP test would be the exam or assessment for those outside the ALS system. So who can take the PEP test? No? So this is the latest qualifications or the latest definition of qualifiers for PEP test. So it is for students from non-formal or informal programs, and homeschooling would be part of that, especially independent homeschooling. And it's also for those who do not have formal or incomplete records of their schooling. So if ever that you've been, with a provider before, but you weren't able to complete your records, or for some reason you've been with the regular school before, and maybe a health issue or a financial issue may have caused you to stop or to change modalities, then the PEP test is for you. Now, currently, as of February 2021, the Bureau of Education Assessment at the DepEd Central Office in Pasig, um, they are offering this test to walk-ins. No? So you can take this test at the DepEd Central Office. Question: if you're not in Metro Manila or it's nearby provinces, where can you take the PEP test? So I guess you have to get in touch with your local DepEd office and connect to the Bureau of Education Assessment in your area and ask for the current guidelines, because right now only the DepEd Central Office offers the PEP test. And so, you want to take the exam, then what do you have to do? Diba? Ano yung minimum requirements? First, you have to be at least 15 years old, given the IATF rules right now. So we have to follow the safety protocols. So 15 years old and up. And you should secure an online schedule. So before going to the DepEd office, make sure you have registered online and you have secured a schedule. For now, it says in their guidelines that Those who can take the PEP test are those students who has an LRN. What does this mean? Kailan ka lang ba magkaka-LRN? Kung galing ka sa isang DepEd school, 'di ba? So the understanding is that you were with a DepEd accredited school and then you stopped. So if you have an existing LRN, then you can take the PEP test. For now, because they haven't released guidelines on students na wala talagang LRN, or as we say, yung talagang organic independent homeschoolers na from kinder until the present talagang walang provider. I think they have different guidelines for such cases. But right now, they are only accepting those who had experience going to regular school. This is as of February 2021. So again, I just want to make this clear that to be sure, I suggest that you get in touch with the Bureau of Educational Assessment just to verify the new rules for students who doesn't have an LRN. Okay? So how about the documentary requirements that you need to prepare for the PEP test? So of course, they would need a Gmail account for your online registration. And then you have to accomplish the registration form that they have online as well. And then you have to submit scanned copies of your last school records. Kasi nga, given that you're from a DepEd accredited school prior to taking this test. So you also need to have your birth certificate, and then the proof of payment for the registration, a one-by-one ID photo for your test permit, and a copy of the school permit or the DepEd recognition for those coming from private schools. Kasi they want to make sure that the school where you last came from is a DepEd accredited school. If it's a private school. Syempre, if you came from a public school, then there would be no need to produce a school permit. Okay, so how does this work, no? So the test will be based on the last level completed in a regular school. Okay, so if your last level was grade 5 and you're currently supposedly in grade 12, then you will be given a test from grade 5 up until covering grade 11 or grade 12. If ever that you get to take the PEP test na wala kang LRN and you fall under this, no experience in regular school whatsoever, then the test will cover everything from kinder to current grade level applied for. So like, for example, if you're an incoming grade 11 student and you never had a provider nor enrolled in a regular school, then the test will cover kinder to grade 10. Okay, so that they will know if you really have the aptitude for grade 11. Okay, so what's the exam coverage? Of course, if you are in grade school, most likely it will cover grade school level AP, English, Filipino, math, and science. So your basic subjects, okay? And for high school, medyo mas in-depth na, diba? Mas malalim na components ng English, which would include your reading, grammar, and all other skills stated here. The same with science, okay? So if, let's say, you're testing for grade 12, then you have to have knowledge of general science, biology, chemistry, and of course, physics. The same goes with math. So you have to cover higher maths. And in terms of Filipino, you have to go through Filipino literature, which includes your Florante et Laura, Ibong Adarna, your Noli Me Tangere, your El Filibusterismo, and also Filipino grammar. And for Araling Panlipunan, you should have knowledge in Asian history, economics, and world history. Granted that this will be in in a Filipino context. I mean Filipino language context, no? So that's the coverage. So how do you get a rating after taking the test? So for you to get placed on the proper grade leveling, you must pass all the subjects for each grade level. So for example, like what we have said earlier, no, that you're applying for grade 12 for the PEP test. Then they gave you an exam from kinder to grade 11. Then you should have a passing score for all subjects from kinder to grade 11. Then you will get a rating that you're an eligible student for grade 12. If you have one failing grade in one level, then you will not be placed in your desired level. So kailangan lahat passing ang scores. The results are usually available within 7 working days after you have taken the test. So you can arrange to pick it up at the office in Pasig, or you can have it shipped to you. So uso na ngayon ang Grab and Lalamove. So I think you can arrange for that. And you can also email Bea at deped.gov.ph for follow-ups and further information on test results. Okay, so that's the DepEd validation route. Is there an alternative to PEP test? Dati naisip natin, no, parang ang hirap, pero that's the only way to go. But then, we didn't know that yes, there's a way around it. And this is through a US validation. Okay, so some homeschool providers, they do give documentation for independent homeschoolers like you. So how does this work? So you just have to find a homeschool provider who gives such service, okay? And then you have to enroll with them, okay? And then usually they would ask you to pay for gap year fees, no, for each undocumented year. Meaning, if you are, let's say, you're an incoming grade 10 and you have been in the homeschooling, let's say just for 2 years because of the pandemic, or just recently, and you want those years documented, then you have to pay for each school year. Okay. And then they will just ask you to send your home records so that they will be able to include it in the transcript. So how about acceptability? They would usually ask us, parang, will these records be acceptable and honored in the Philippines? Yes, they're acceptable. US records are accepted anywhere. Of course, pati dito sa atin, they're accepted. Transcripts and diplomas are legalized. We call it apostilled by the State Department. It is a legal process wherein you authenticate documents that you send internationally, no? So to prove that they are real. So we have that apostille naman, that stamp, that blue ribbon that you usually see from documents abroad. And usually it is a homeschool provider who will transact this for you. So you don't need to worry about it. And of course, there will just be a few charges for the apostille processing and the courier fees. But basically, that's just it. All right. So, final tips on documentation, no? Again, get it only when necessary. If you feel like you don't need to document naman, then don't. Ako, I suggest you just do it when it's time to go to college, or if they want to go to regular school for high school, then that's the only time you apply for documentation. And of course, keep your home records, mommies and daddies. So I suggest you keep an Excel file or a Word file with tables and all that, so that it would be easier for you if ever you do decide to get validation in the future. And Lastly, homeschool independently for as long as you can. I mean, hindi matatawaran yung ginagawa ninyo in independent homeschooling. I mean, I have seen students who really thrived and are, very well rounded. So, homeschool for as long as you can. And if it's time for college application, then doon na lang kayo kumuha ng documentation para hindi rin stressful for both the parents and the kids. And of course, for more information on the PEP test, you can get in touch with Bea at deped.gov.ph, or you can also check out this website, teachersph.com. They have extensive information as well on PEP test and other DepEd guidelines. And if you are interested in getting a US validation for your independent homeschooling, you can get in touch with us at www.bettertogetherhomeschool.com. All right. So thank you so much, parents, for your time and for your questions. We would be glad to answer them. You can type them in the chat and we will try to address them. Thank you so much.